Kathy, hey Ian, how you guys been?
Good.
Good.
Great.
Guys hanging in there?
Absolutely.
Oh, I forgot to ask you guys, where are you guys located at?
We're in California.
Oh, you guys are, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually from California. I'm in Las
Oh,
Vegas.
okay. Okay. Yeah. I've been in the Bay Area like my entire life. So
Really? What part
yeah.
of, you mind if I ask what?
I grew up in Fremont and we're in Martinez now. So up
Oh,
more in the Walnut Creek area, which is where Ian's been his whole life because we've been in Martinez the whole time. So
okay. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm actually, I was raised in Milpitas.
oh yes. We were in like Warm Springs, like border of Milpitas. Yeah.
Wow, this is small world, right?
Small world.
All right, what would you guys like to share about Ian's autism journey and of course your journey too with him?
Sure. I can start back at the beginning a little bit. So, well, actually, I have three children. So, Ian is my middle child. I had three kids in 3.5 years, so that would have been busy enough on its own. Um, Ian was a very active, very frustrated newborn. He didn't sleep often, so I was very sleep deprived, and trying to figure some of this out. And really, I knew there was something different, but he didn't fit the typical autistic test that like a pediatrician does when they're newborns. Because he is on the spectrum, he's on the high functioning end. And so he didn't have a lot of the classic symptoms. Plus, I was realizing like, back in the day when we got the diagnosis, they were still calling it Asperger's, but it's high functioning autism.
I was gonna say they changed that somewhere in between. And
Yeah.
when I was going to speech therapy and they were switching that on me, they were like, no, it's just called autism now. And I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Um, so, but I knew there was something different, so when they're little, I was in survival mode. I had three small kids. I was just trying to get through every day, make sure everybody was fed, the usual. And then when he started school, we just had him in a local public school. It got a little more difficult. We were realizing he had more trouble with social interactions. He was having more anger, more outbursts, even more so than what he would just have around the house.
Mhm.
It At the time when I was talking to the pediatrician, I said, I'm no expert. Obviously, I'm just a mom. I am a nurse, but that was not my field for sure. But it was like his brain was going faster than his body or his mouth did.
Yeah.
And we could tell he was very intelligent, but he would get really angry and have outbursts when he couldn't get across what he was thinking or his body wouldn't do what he wanted him to do. So when, that first year when they're going through all their milestones, he hit all of his milestones, but he would do them for a few days, maybe a week top, and then he was on the next one. So he actually was to walking by 7.5 months. By 9 months, he was dribbling a soccer ball down the hallway. And I used to, people look at me and say, oh, that's so cute. And I'm like, no, it's not. I mean, who needs a 7-month-old who's already walking away from you and a 9-month-old that can run away from you? Um, and so it was very stressful when he was young. And at that point, from a medical standpoint, I would say it's like doing symptom management. Like I didn't know what the cause was. We were just trying to help with how it came out, and deal with it. So we tried a lot of things in school, a lot of just different ways that the teachers could help. We had a lot of frustrated teachers. And I have
I feel bad for half of them.
I have a stack of write-ups from when he was in school. And but we eventually got to the point where the school did do a testing on him, and it came back that he didn't have anything that would qualify for an IEP or any sort of help. So
back in the elementary school.
Yeah, it was back in elementary school, maybe like first or second grade. I honestly can't remember when they did that, but they gave us a behavioral support plan, but that's not legally binding. So basically, whoever was his teacher or the principal or whatever could do whatever they wanted, and decide whether they wanted to follow it or not. So
I remember some of the teachers were awesome during that time.
Yeah, you did have a couple.
Nice.
Yeah, you had a couple that were very
especially
helpful.
your original principal. She was also really nice.
What was his favorite mainly? Like, was he starting fights or was he just not listening or?
Yeah, it would just be, so he would push. He didn't actually like start fights, but he would like push or get angry.
So I also remember during that time, I very much went with the ideology of monkey see, monkey do.
Oh.
It was very simple and it worked some of the time, so it was fine. But the problem is some of the kids would roughhouse, and when you just copy what other people are doing, you don't exactly push people in a good way when you don't know them.
Yeah, so he would
Didn't work out that
struggle with the context of the
Little bit.
idea. What else? The other thing he struggled with when he was younger was the idea of like who were really friends.
Mhm.
So basically, he would say his friends were the kids that were actually picking on him in school, and then the kids that were actually trying to be his friends, he thought didn't like him. Like he had the idea of friendship and being, nice to each other flipped.
Yeah.
And he would walk up to complete strangers and act like they were friends. Like we'd be at the park and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go down the hill over there and talk to my friends." And I'd look at him and it was like a bunch of high schoolers that were sitting down in a circle smoking. I'm like, "Ian, those aren't your friends. You don't even know them."
Mhm.
And do you remember this one?
I don't remember that
He
one.
wanted to give them our address so he
Oh.
could invite them over for to hang out. And he was probably 6 at the
Oh.
time.
I
And he
don't remember that.
and he wanted to walk up to complete strangers and give them our address and
I
call
remember
them.
one time where I did that. We were at like a Fuddruckers or something, and they had like all those arcade things, and there was a group of boys who were playing with the air hockey, and I wanted to play air hockey. So I was like, "Oh, I'll do a challenge against one of them, and I'll get to play against them and such." And I did not know these kids at all, and I was just like, "I want to play air hockey," and I played it with them.
Yeah.
And the whole situation was just like, "All right, cool."
At
So
least you-
sometimes it works.
Yeah, at least you made friends usually. That's good.
Yes, so he did. It was just watching who he was making friends with and how he was doing it, because sometimes that didn't always line up. But yeah, so then about the beginning of third grade, it was getting very difficult to keep him in school. I was getting called 2 to 3 times a week to come pick him up early because he had gotten upset. The teacher didn't want to deal with him. And it got to the point where one time he actually got upset enough and couldn't figure out what was going on that he ran out of the school and was heading. Luckily we were down the street, so he's heading down the street, and they called us, and my husband jumped in the car and like caught him halfway home from the school. So these were kind of red flags to us. So I literally just pulled him out, didn't know what else to do, called a friend who I knew that homeschooled and was like, "What do I do?" So that was the beginning of our homeschool journey. And once we got over explaining to Ian that it wasn't a punishment, we weren't like taking him out of school to punish him. It was just we needed to find a better fit for him. He completely thrived. For him, it was incredible. Within almost 2 weeks, like most of the anger was gone, the outbursts were gone. We could do school on his schedule, different things like that. So then, with a lot of the anger aside, it made very clear some of the other behaviors that were going on. So I did ask his pediatrician, and we got a referral to a behavioral physician to test him. And that was great because he got the official diagnosis of, Asperger's, high functioning autism. And she said there might be a little ADHD in there, but it's hard because behaviors are kind of mixed. And so she was hard to separate it. We chose at the time that I didn't feel like he needed to go on to medication for that. If he could work on the behaviors and, go through therapy and stuff like that without any issues. So
that was definitely a good idea.
Yeah, so we did. Yeah, we did.
Back at like the medication not being the best for you when you're that young or something like that. I was like,
yeah, so we wanted to wait to see if it was really necessary. And it didn't turn out to be for him. I am saying nothing against medication because there are kids that definitely need it, but we just wanted to make sure before we started it if he needed it. So we had him in an online public school. It's actually around the country. It's just called K-12, but each state has their own version of it. So you have teacher support. They send you all the books, the lessons, all of that. It worked for us. Not that I'm necessarily advocating it, but if you don't know where to start and you need someone to help you out,
they were pretty good.
They were very helpful.
They were very helpful.
Yeah. And I mentioned to the teachers, I didn't know how this diagnosis would affect his learning, like if there were learning problems in addition to it. Because if it was really just social and anger management, he was at home and we could work on that. So they did a whole nother set of testing for learning disabilities.
That's why I had to do so many tests.
They came out to the house and spent hours here like doing tests. But anyway, so that school, because I know it was
figuring out everything out.
The of those tests were just really long, and I knew that I just didn't want to do them half of the time because they were like placement tests.
Yeah.
They didn't affect my grade or anything. But I'd just be like, I don't want to do this.
But the nice thing is because of that, and because it's an online public school, is that we got an IEP out of it. And so we were able to get on with higher people in the district and within the school to decide if he needed any more adaptation other than just being at home, where we could, be flexible in the timing of what he did. And I worked very closely. You always had a teacher that you could work with. And I worked closely with her, just saying, okay, like, it's really hard for Ian to write papers. Like, sometimes just that connect of getting your thoughts down on paper is, sorry, I did a lot of reading on this too, because that's what I do when I find out, when I need to find out about something from anybody. I read a lot. It can almost be physically painful for them to try to get their thoughts on paper in handwriting. So he would pace back and forth across the living room while I typed out what he said. And I would just type it out verbatim, exactly what he said, print it up, give it to him, and then he could read it and like cross out, edit, whatever he wanted to change. And then we would turn his things in typed, like his longer papers. And they were fine with it. It really turned out to not be a lot of adaptation from the actual school. But it was just things that we tweaked here at home to fit his needs. Yeah.
Remember a lot of those.
How do you do with writing now? Do you write pretty good now?
Yes, but I also kind of do a similar thing still to what we previously did, because before, when it was just I would pace and talk about it, where my mom would help with writing, and it would just be the occasional spelling things. I found out in Word documents there is a function called dictate, which pretty much does the same type of thing, where I get to just speak into a microphone and it will put the words down on a piece of paper. And that started to make writing significantly more comfortable. And even now in college, when I'm doing like 1,000-word papers, it's very comfortable to just write it out really quickly. And I'm very happy with it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So all of it, I was skipping ahead. His college work is completely independent now that he can do that, because it's easier to speak it than it is to type it or write it. So it was great. So then the school he was in actually provided some like social group therapy for him. He qualified on his IEP due to language, which I would have thought of, because he talked all the time, but he couldn't have a two-way conversation, so it was, he would talk about what he was interested in, but he couldn't interact and listen to what anybody else wanted or understand body language and cues and things like that. So that was the general focus of that. So, I don't even notice it, like all of it in general just made great progress. And then having him at home where we could get him into social things with other kids and help him identify what things were making him angry, understand them better, and how to react to them better was great.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I mean, that's great that he's thriving and he's doing a lot better, and finding ways to get him to actually, do things. I mean, that's actually a really good idea. I never thought of that. I might actually try that with my son. I was going to try to see if he, how he does with that.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Anything else from childhood?
Well, like notable moments or just funny moments? I got a few of each.
Share what you like.
I remember, and of course I blank on all of them. But trying to think of notable moments. One of the things that was definitely a big help when going to, I remember, because when we went to homeschooling, one of the things that I missed out on was social interaction. And that was where it was a lot more difficult for me, because from my perspective, I also needed normal social interaction on top of speech help with figuring out what to do. That made things a bit more difficult. I had since we were homeschooled, there wasn't any like normal interaction like at a school, which was one of the parts that I kind of missed about public school. But but through programs like what we do at the church currently, or what we did at the church previously, we would do, I can say the program name, yeah. We would do a program called Owana that my mom was leading, or the main commander of, sorry. And I would be going through the program, which was memorizing verses and talking with everyone there for like a few hours, which was a nice bit of social interaction. But then when I got old enough, I was able to start leading in the group as well. And that was where I got a lot more social interaction, because at that point now my job is to socialize with other people. And one of the big helps during that time was actually when I started joining the youngest group, which was Cubbies, which is like 3 to 5 year olds, and it was a big group of like
About 40 kids.
10. Well, for each individual group, it was like 10 or 11 people.
There were 10 for 2 adults, yeah.
Yeah. And that was where I think I got some of the most practice with learning how to socialize, because I was able to I wasn't having to think about all the advanced socializing things. I had to focus on just like basic paying attention to a kid. Does the kid seem like they're lying? Okay, they have very exaggerated body, like what the body tells. So like being able to recognize the exaggerated stuff, it helped me a lot with sort of translating over to talking with people more my age, because I can recognize the exaggerated behaviors and the way that they speak. It helped with learning how to talk to older people as well, which was very nice to go through.
Okay. That is, yeah. I mean, it's amazing how little ones can actually teach you. You know, like
yes,
they do. They're very smart when they're little, or when we're little. You know, but it just is amazing. It's like you can learn a lot from little ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we just took every teachable moment that we could. And again, probably, so now he's in college, almost done. He's got one more year. He has always been fascinated with computers and video games, which is not uncommon for teenage boys, but he got good at it and spent some summers learning how to do some programming, and is now in it's video game engineering. That's bad. I should know this.
It is that. It's like video game development or engineering.
Yeah. So he will graduate next year with his degree so that he can actually use that passion of his as a career. So yeah, he's doing really well. So we have, sorry for the dog. But so yeah, anyway, so he has gone from being very angry to being like very calm, very go with the flow, very I don't know. I mean, it's like a complete 180 almost now that he.
It's something that I'm recognizing I'm doing. I've done a lot of the things that were very problematic, like my anger or my patience, which were things that we worked on a lot. I've gotten much better about, but I still recognize that I still do some things at this point that are more or less acceptable. Like I'm not the best with eye contact still. I pace whenever I'm talking to someone a little bit. And but I usually I do those things and nobody really has a problem with it. Just some of the small things just small things. They don't actually significantly affect the conversation, and I can think about paying attention to the more problematic stuff instead.
It's like getting down to just the little quirks that are socially acceptable and we all have anyway. So
yeah.
I feel like a lot of people have met him and don't even realize he's on the spectrum, because he's just But again, when we got the diagnosis, I will say, I know a lot of parents debate about this and it's a personal decision, but we chose to tell him because he was very frustrated and didn't know why he was behaving the way he was. So we found him a book, but I'll be honest, I don't even know if you can still find it. But the book was called All Cats Have Asperger's.
That's the reason I'm still a cat person, not a dog person. I'm sorry.
So it goes through and explains their behavior and their personality based on cats. Like sometimes they like to be in a group, but sometimes they really like to be alone. And they have so he went back in his room, closed the door, went through the book, came out, was like, Mom,
And you guys
come here.
You guys were talking about me about that before. You were like, "Oh, should we tell him? Will we give him the book? We'll let him understood. We'll let him look through it a bit." And I came back into the room, and I was like,
This is me.
everything makes sense.
It was actually funny. And he went through page by page. It was like, and this is me, and this is me, and this is me. So it was very eye-opening for him. And for him, and again, a lot of this is you just have to know your own child. Like for him, it gave him something to work on. You know, I mean, now he kind of like, okay, so there's a reason I'm getting angry, right? So what is that reason? And then so he would come out and ask questions, you know, okay, this happened today and I did this. Is that a normal response, or is that, you know, me being on the spectrum? You know what I mean? Like it was like, is this, you know, so it was great. He just really he got to use his mind to problem solve that weird. Brilliant brain of his.
It was weird. It became is this a my mental disorder thing, which I wouldn't normally do, but it just kind of turned into that, and it helped me kind of pay attention to what was I doing and why was I doing it, which was very helpful during that time.
Yeah. And then as he got older, because his siblings are close, they had very similar friend groups and stuff. So it got to the point that eventually, as Ian would do something, they could like turn and say, you know, hey, that was a good response or whatever. Or he could turn to them and say, did I do that right? Or, you know, so then he was getting support from his siblings as well that were, because I would have to come out, be playing a video game and I would hear him and I'd go into my other son's room and be like, okay, is this a video game thing that they kind of like talk smack to each other and whatever? Or is Ian being inappropriate on this game? He's like, no, that's totally normal. And I said, okay, just curious because I didn't know if it was something.
We insult each other as jokes. It's not a
well, but it was just something
it's not
that I didn't know.
I'm not doing this because I'm bullying someone.
Exactly. I didn't know if he was being socially acceptable on the video game, so I had to ask too.
Because sometimes, you know, when we play games, sometimes we can get out of control.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so I think that's most of our journey thus far. Yeah, I can say to all the parents out there, if you are in the throes of it and, you know, waiting for diagnosis, getting diagnosed or not, you're in the middle of it, like just hang in there, give yourself some grace. It is rough. There are days that you're like, hey, everybody in the house got fed. Like it's a win. You're not going to do everything perfect. You're not going to do everything right, but just understand your child, you know, because it is a spectrum. So no two people on the spectrum, just like no two adults are the same. So you have to know your child in order to help them. What other struggles did I have? I know since it was fairly new getting into the whole high functioning autism when he was diagnosed, because that was kind of fairly new. I struggled with people to understand. They thought we just weren't disciplining him enough or we were letting him run all over us. And I had the ability to say, hey, I have 3 kids and I'm raising them the same. And he's the only one doing this. So there's something else going on. But I only had maybe 2 people that supported me, who understood, that would try to help, give me a break with him. Like, I mean, I obviously couldn't find babysitters to come watch 3 little kids with him being so rowdy. I don't know how to say. He was definitely a handful when he was little. So it was just, you know, that part was very stressful. And then I think I had mentioned to you this before, when Ian got his diagnosis, we also realized my husband had the same characteristics. So although he has not officially been diagnosed, he was unofficially diagnosed in a session we were doing that Ian was in, where the therapist was like, you know, I think your husband got it too.
So he's got it too.
Yeah. So obviously our whole household, we just took it on as there was nothing wrong with them, but we needed to learn how to talk, interact, and behave in ways that, like, basically how I described it to Ian when he was young is like, you just think about things differently. Like, you have a different way of processing and thinking about them. And I'm trying to figure out how to best be able to get across to you so that you'll understand what I'm trying to state. Like, we just need to work on our communication in a different way. And then, my two other kids as well, just in talking to their dad or me talking to my husband, it was like, I'm not criticizing, judging, but it just changed and kind of flipped the narrative a little bit. Like, I needed to learn how to communicate in a way that was more effective. But yeah, we definitely have the visual in our house on a day-to-day basis of the person who didn't know growing up, who now was, so what, he found out in his 40s that he had it. And his, how he acts and behaves and things like that, as compared to Ian, who found out when he was young, got the help and the support and the services, and had parents that knew he had it, so we tried to support him. So we can tell you from our house, if you can get the support and the help, it makes a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
To help just learn at that young developmental age, when they're still learning how to interact and do things, to get that ingrained, as opposed to trying to flip it when you're older.
That'd be one of the big things I'd recommend as well, is to anyone who is struggling out there, being patient with the kid, but also helping them learn early on the behaviors that what they are doing, helping them recognize what they're doing, and helping them self-reflect a little would be a major help, because that was a major help to me when I was younger.
And sometimes you have to be creative. When he was younger and we first found out, he didn't know how to express it. So we would draw pictures, draw me stick figures of what you think happened. And then I would draw stick figures of what I saw, so we could compare them. And that was just a way. He was very visual, and he had to process it by looking at pictures too. That was an argument with your brother over video games. I'll tell you about it later.
I don't remember that one, apparently.
So yeah, so I mean, I guess again, we've kind of come back, we're not at the end of this, but we're kind of coming out the other end with him being in his 20s, and my whole family kind of being involved with helping support Ian. And then also in this children's program that I ran, we accepted kids with all different special needs, not just even on the spectrum. So I definitely have a passion for, or a heart for, like, supporting families that are finding out about this, because it's very alienating. Yeah. It's very, your kids are getting told no a lot. You're getting kicked out of places. Yeah. I got calls from places telling me I shouldn't bring my son back anymore because he was too difficult for them to manage. And that's heartbreaking.
It is.
Especially when you're watching your child at night going, I don't know why I was angry. I don't know why I did. Like, they're really trying hard to work on it. And, I had friends that wouldn't hang out with us anymore, or, just kind of disconnected. And so sometimes it was hard getting the social interactions. Moms didn't want to be on when they were having play dates with their child and Ian, because you have to watch it the whole time. So probably my two biggest takeaways and recommendations is, one is, as a parent, like, find your village. It may be a small village. It may be one person, it may be two, but find it, because you need support. You need somebody telling you you're doing a good job. You need somebody telling you to hang in there, and that your child is worth it, and just all of that. And then number two is whatever support you can get, whether it's through your school or talk to your pediatrician, your doctor, whatever, and see if you can get them into some kind of therapy, social interaction group, so that somebody else is helping you, because some kids respond better to outside influence as opposed to a parent. So it was really nice that he had both. He had me that was trying to help him work on stuff, and I would get videos and books and things that we could practice, but then he would go to therapy and get to work with other kids. And simple things like, walking into a Jamba Juice and ordering, and them telling you that they don't have any more of the flavor that you want, and how do you handle that in a polite way. And
I didn't think about this.
And
that's
in the background, like, oh, Yeah, I have some thoughts on this one.
Yeah. Well, because so his therapy group actually did that. There was like a Jamba Juice in the parking lot, and they would take, like, there were 3 boys in it together, and they'd walk over and they'd let them all order a Jamba Juice and kind of role play, because the people there knew that they were bringing them over, kind of role play, what do you do if they don't have your flavor anymore? Or what do you do if you don't have enough money for the big one that you wanted?
It was also kind of fun just doing that as well, because that was one of the first times I would order something and I was like, ooh, okay, this is new.
Yeah. And I understood, because a lot of families don't go out and do stuff or don't eat at restaurants when they have a child, that might have an outburst, because it's embarrassing, it's difficult to manage. We tried as much as possible to do that. I'd go into a coffee place to order my coffee and have them say that they want their hot chocolate or whatever. So we had already tried some of that, but not all families can do that or have the resources to do that. Like, if you're a single parent with multiple kids and one on the spectrum, it'd be really hard to go to a restaurant knowing if your child's going to have an outburst. So you have to be a little creative. um, yeah, right. Maybe have 2 friends over and pretend you're at a restaurant. I don't know. But yeah, just know your child, know their strengths and weaknesses. Because now that we're, at a later stage in this, and Ian's adapting just fine and able to now, like, learn his own lessons. And my adult daughter now works with special needs kids and as her profession, and we try to incorporate, like, be buddies to special needs kids that have to go to events, so that the parents are free to do it. So and just to support those families, because we know it was rough.
Yeah.
It was well worth it. And I will say, I do not regret any moment of it. I was very tired because I worked through the whole thing. And but Ian has been a great kid the whole time along, but he has definitely turned into an incredible adult. I think
Not the whole time, but
well, every kid has their issues. No child is perfect. No parent is perfect. We established that well, but it's been incredible to see him grow up, become an adult, go to college, and kind of setting his adult life up, and kind of seeing the reward of all the hard work.
Yeah, that's great.
We both did. We both did.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, look at how Ian's thriving now. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Guys' journey is definitely very inspiring. I mean, I'm glad to hear everything that you guys said. And I'm happy to have you guys both as guests. I mean, you guys were great guests, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, we'd be happy to come back, and especially if anybody wants to know anything specific. We have tried to be very open about it. We've thought about speaking on it or writing a book about our journey on it. And
Just wait for you to make the book.
he's waiting for me to write the book, basically. You can dictate
I don't remember half of
Yeah,
it.
there you go.
Right, I just put in my input.
Yeah, you can dictate it. But yeah, we're very open about it, just because we do know how hard the struggle is and how much of a stigma there still is about any sort of mental health or neurodivergence at all. There's a few of us in this house that also have ADHD, and so we have a few things, and so we're definitely advocates for supporting the families through this. And if for some reason somebody's watching this that doesn't have a child with autism, but they just want to find out about it, that would be a great thing. If you have someone in your life, a friend with a kid, anything, just know that honestly, sometimes the best thing you can do is just say, hey, you're doing a great job. I had of my 2 people, like, Ian couldn't have had a better mother. Like, you guys, it was perfectly set up for you to be his mother. And like, that would just warm my heart, and it would get me through months of struggle. So, you need somebody to tell you you're doing a good job when you're in the thick of it. So
it is also very nice when you have someone else outside of the group who understands when a kid is neurodivergent or something like that, and is willing to still be patient with the kid and talk with them and interact with them. So
yeah. Because then once we identified it and he got a little older, then we had people that were much more supportive and like trying to help him, like other parents that were around of his friends. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for both being on here. I mean, I truly appreciate it, and I'm definitely looking forward to having you guys back. And
sounds good. Thank you. We appreciate it. Good luck with your podcast.
see you guys later.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.